Everyone, good afternoon. I think I'm going to get our started in our afternoon. Thanks for coming back for round two of a fabulous symposium day, and a credit to our students for a great day of planning that they've done. I have the great pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the afternoon, Ms. Audrey Calkins. And she's going to switch it up a little bit and share with you, she actually is a local labor and employment attorney here in Memphis, but she had a personal experience with showing up to vote and being told she wasn't a registered voter at a local polling station. And so the students who know me and have taken me, I love what she did next. She said, I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to go to the General Assembly and try to change things around provisional ballots and an appellate process to sort of address the issue. And she hasn't had success yet, but I'm convinced that success is going to be coming. With that, I want to turn it over. You have her bio in front of you, so I don't want to make too much of her valuable time. I just want to mention, for some of you who do know right now, go Tigers, they are playing, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone.
All right. Here we go. Today you get 30 minutes about that time I showed up to vote and was told, no, you can't, which is the less formal name of my presentation today, and the importance of involvement on the local level. As she said, I do labor and employment defense. I'm at Ogletree. This is not my practice area. This is not something I had ever, expected to experience, but I think it's a good learning opportunity for how obstacles are in place to vote in this city, county, state, country, for everyone, and how we can work to change that. So, let's begin. I'm not from here. I am from Sevierville, which is in Sevier County in East Tennessee, very different from Memphis in every way. But I moved here to clerk after law school for Judge Anderson in federal court from 2011 to 2012, moved to Houston to practice, decided I wanted to live here instead and do labor and employment because those cases are interesting, and moved back in March of 2015-ish. Bought a house in Evergreen, which matters for reasons we will discuss later. And then when I changed my driver's license, belatedly, I registered to vote at the, what's the place where you get your driver's license? The DMV, thank you. And so that's the day that I registered to vote, the day I got my Tennessee registration. This is a screenshot from documents I got from the Shelby County Election Commission after sending a couple of nastygrams, as we'll talk about here in a minute. But if you look up at the top, you can see the first day I registered, January 29th, 2015, affirmative proof of my registration. Thing that is important. I also voted because voting is fun and important. So I voted in a couple of the elections that we had in 2015. There was a municipal election. I think we elected a mayor or something along those lines. And then there was a runoff. I voted in that too. And, voting was great because we had all these elections. I was getting to vote all the time, only once per election. Okay. So then there's a closer-up of my votes to prove that I voted, to prove that I was registered. Look at the second one. It's November 19th, 2015. So then what happens? It's March 1st, 2016. It's a Tuesday. It was raining and it was cold, and I remember these details because I had a client meeting out east, and I had to get out there in time to, to get to the polling place to vote, to go to the meeting by 10 a.m. or something. And so I got to the poll really early. I vote at Trinity United Methodist. If that is your polling place, you're like, that's not the actual polling place. It's not. You don't vote in the seminary or the sanctuary. You vote catty corner across the street, okay? But so, I show up to vote, and I had my driver's license and my voter registration card because I know what the law is, and I know that I need to be prepared. And so I walked up, I handed in my registration, and they're like, you're not in the system. And I said, what do you mean? Try my last name. It doesn't have a U in it, okay? It's spelled just like Jeff Calkins, no relation. No relation that I know of. But so so I'm like, just check the spelling. And then they're like, it's still not there. And I said, really? Let me see the screen. My last name has an E in it. It's not A-U-D-R-Y. Let's make sure. So they turned it toward me, and they had spelled my name right, and I wasn't in there. And then I was like, well, search for my address. So they searched for my address, and it wasn't there. And then I'm like, okay, well, try on my voter registration, it says North Garland Street. So maybe put North Garland instead of just plain Garland. That didn't work either. It still wasn't there. So then they're like, well, you have a registration card, and it says that you're registered, but you're not in our system, so all you can do is cast a provisional ballot. So I said, okay. Has anybody ever had to cast a provisional ballot in this room? For the record, they're recording this, the record is no, and there's probably 100 and something maybe people in here. That's a lot. So the provisional ballot looks kind of like the screens that you see on your electronic voting screen. It's on paper. You check the boxes and sign it and say, I promise that I am who I say I am. I'm not a convicted felon. I'm a registered voter. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm eligible to vote, whatever. This is not the actual ballot. I couldn't find a sample online, but this is the primary ballot from Super Tuesday for the presidential election. So I cast the provisional ballot, and I didn't come prepared with proof of my residency at my address that you need when you get your driver's license, when you prove that you live where you say you live. I didn't come with 2 months of MLGW bills. I didn't come with a bank statement. I didn't come with all the paper that you need to prove where you live when I submitted my provisional ballot. I just folded it up and was like, okay, whatever, I voted, I will take care of this later. So I left, I went to work. I went to my client meeting, and then I went to work, and then I got on the phone. I called the election commission. I spoke to like 6 different people, and I was like, I want to know what is going on. I tried to vote. I was told that I couldn't. Why am I not in your system? No one had any earthly idea. Plus, it was Super Tuesday, and they were really busy because, it's a big election, right? So anyway, because this is a CLE presentation, this is the code section that lays out, what a provisional ballot is and in the circumstances when you're supposed to be given one. If you show up to vote at your polling place and you are told that you cannot vote because you are not a registered voter, you say, I want my provisional ballot. You fill it out, you sign it, you put it in the box. Before you do that, you call one of your friends who's a lawyer and say, oh my God, I have to fill out a provisional ballot. What do I need to do? Which, if I had thought that this would be an issue, I would have done, but I didn't. Because I have 3 law licenses and 1 license in 3 states, and that was apparently insufficient. I think it was because at the time I only had 2. All states beginning with T, Tennessee and Texas. So, this is the procedure in the TCA for what happens when you cast a provisional ballot, all right? You have to complete a voter registration application. It says, if you have moved, please list your new address. So I wrote down where I lived and my new address, where I lived, the same place, because I've lived in the same house since September 2014. It's wonderful. It's a 5-minute walk to cross town. I love it. It's great. But that was step 1. So I completed the application. And then I signed I'm a citizen, I'm not a felon, I'm over 18, that information. Then I got my provisional ballot. Then I voted. So very simple. Complete the form, put it in the box. The end, move on. So then at the end of the day, all of your new documents are supposed to be taken somewhere by some conveyor belt magic carpet over to the long fancy word that I think is on the next slide. The Central Provisional Ballot Counting Board, which is essentially the same thing as the Election Commission. It can be the same people that are on the board as are on the Election Commission. So they get it, and then they're supposed to count them. So Shelby County has a lot of provisional ballots. Do y'all remember from the last big election that we had, I think in November, there were almost 1,000 or maybe over 1,000 provisional ballots cast in Shelby County, and that's on top of dealing with the results from all the different polling places that have to be evaluated to certify the results of an election. The Secretary of State requires elections to be certified within 3 weeks after the election. For a big county like Shelby County, that's very fast. For a small county like, probably where I grew up, it's less of a challenge, right? So anyway, so the board gets the box of provisional ballots from every polling place in the county. Then they unlock the box in front of a majority of the members of the board. I don't know how many people are on the board. It could be 2 people for all I know, right? If it's a 3-person board. So Then they review the records. This is important. What they look at is very limited to determine whether you are eligible to cast a provisional ballot. They look at their own records. This will matter later. Stay with me. They look at their own election records, and then they look at an assortment of departments of health and human services and the VA and like all whatever to determine whether you meet the statutory requirements for registration, which we've said several times. And then see if you meet the statutory requirements for registration in the precinct where you voted. You can only vote provisionally in the precinct where you are registered, your polling place. I could not go vote downtown at the Election Commission. I could not go vote out by work because our offices are in East Memphis. I have to vote on Election Day in the place where I'm registered if you're going to vote provisionally and you want it to count. Otherwise, no good. But I voted in my polling place. So I thought, right? But let's see. This one is a big deal. That's the information they consider. They don't look at anything else. You could append your birth certificate to your provisional ballot and they wouldn't look at it. They don't care. Because it's not in their records. And probably, from an evidentiary standpoint, because it's not an authenticated document, whatever. Anyway, so then they look at the ways to count your ballot to see whether your vote will count. So you just have to have been registered they determine whether you should have been registered. I should have been registered. I had voted in November 2015. March 2016 is like 4 months, 3 months? Math. 4 months after that. So that's not enough time for me to be purged from the records for not voting. I think it was the next election after that runoff in 2015. And then you have to have met the statutory requirements for registration in the precinct where you vote. So I lived in the precinct. I have lived in the precinct. I still live in the precinct. Nothing has changed. So then they decide whether to accept the ballot or not. They vote, and then within that 3-week period. At some point, no one knows in the 3-week period when they actually consider your particular provisional ballot. So, I voted on March 1st. I called the commission several times in the 3 weeks after the election. I tried to talk to them. I was like, I had to vote provisionally. You said I wasn't registered. I am. Let me know if I can come down, if I can provide proof. I'll give you my MLGW bill. I'll give you, I have a copy of my mortgage I can give you to show that I own the house. Like, I'll give you my phone bill, which is addressed to them. I'll show you my AT&T, internet, whatever you need, so that I could vote. Because it was the presidential primary. Your vote matters, right? Well, 3 weeks later, on March 22nd, I get home from work, check my mail, and I have a letter from the Shelby County Election Commission. Look what it said. My vote was not counted because I was not eligible to vote in the election. Reason? Well, is it not there? Oh, no. It didn't show. The reason that is supposed to be on the slide says there's a box right below this one that says reason, and then it says moved out of county. So my vote didn't count. I have been a proud Shelby County resident. I chose 901. Let's be clear, okay? I have been a proud Shelby County resident since March 2014. I chose my neighborhood and my house and this city on purpose. And so for them to think that I had moved out of the county when I showed up with a valid, voter registration and had voted 4 months before with a valid driver's license, it blew my mind a little bit. So, what was I gonna do? What do you do when you get mad and you have a law degree and several law licenses? You write a nastygram. I do labor and employment. I respond to a lot of nastygrams, but they're way more fun to write than respond to. So, I emailed the Election Commission. It took 6 days because I had to digest what had occurred for a little bit. So you don't really get to see my nastygram. Other than the strong statement, the Election Commission improperly denied my right to vote in the March 1st presidential primary. Instead, what you get to see is an accidental reply all, which is the best thing, all right? So the commission says, I think I know what happened. I would like to discuss before someone responds to the voter. Oops. Oops. I got another oops. Someone just held a sign up. How many? 10 minutes? Oh no. So the sign says, I think the documentation information that I gave you accomplishes that. Who knows what that is? It must have been one of the Joes at the help desk, because I had talked to somebody named Joe, and there was apparently someone on the commission named Joe, and they were confused as to which Joe it was who gave me misinformation. Because I have never spoken to this person before. Yeah, okay, Joe. So, I get these 2 oops emails. Nothing happened. So, what again? What's a disenfranchised lawyer to do? Lawyer up. I hired my friend, Gary Peoples at Birch Porter. Hired. He took me on pro bono. But this is the benefit of having resources. Let's pause and acknowledge that I have 2 law licenses and am a former federal law clerk and no friends who will take me on pro bono to do this thing because they like writing nastygrams to government officials. Not everyone has this resource, okay? So Gary wrote an nastygram to the commission and said, how dare you, we want public records, whatever, blah, blah. Help us figure out what happened. So the commission responds, and I'm glad this one is here. It is rare that you will get a government entity to admit that it messed up. The commission says, it appears that based on the information that was available in the Election Commission records, that is key. Remember, they can only consider what is in their records. The cancellation of Ms. Calkins' voter registration should not have occurred, nor the exclusion of her provisional ballot. So now we know what happened. My registration got canceled. Why? Let's find out. So we sent a public records request, as you do. Right? Another nastygram. Then they didn't respond. So we said, hey, send us the records. Come on, what's going on here? So then they respond. They sent me 3 documents, 2 of which I already had and had, sent them, and a copy of another voter registration that I had apparently filled out at some point. But what they didn't show me was something showing why my voter registration got canceled in the first place, or any internal communications after that March 28th, those oops emails, right, the accidental reply alls, or anything showing how they decided to cancel my registration or deny my provisional ballot. So I was unsatisfied, so I said, Gary, we got some more work to do. So Gary wrote another nastygram, and then the commission finally responded. What did I learn? I learned this. You see that middle line? Cancel texts. There's a zoom in for you. Let's note on the date. February 11th, 2016. So what had happened is I got a letter in the mail from Texas that said, hey, we figured out that you haven't lived in Texas for a while and your voter registration is in another state, so we need to cancel your Texas voter registration. Please acknowledge. I said, okay, that's fine. You can cancel my Texas voter registration. Texas sent a form to Tennessee that said, hey, Audrey doesn't live in Texas anymore, so we canceled her Texas voter registration. Someone at the commission thought, oh, Audrey doesn't live in Shelby County anymore, so they canceled my Tennessee registration too. Yup. And I've talked to Mark Goins, the state election commissioner, and that is not the only time that that has happened. There are multiple instances of someone misreading this form from Texas and canceling a valid Tennessee voter registration. Let that simmer in your mind for a minute. So this is why, all right, so remember I applied January 29th. The March 1st reapplication date, that's Super Tuesday, that's my primary voting day. So let's think about the significance of this. I had no notice that Tennessee had canceled my voter registration. It was canceled 19 days before the presidential primary, and it happened because they can't read a form. All right? Why does the 19 days matter? Because I wouldn't have been able to re-register and then vote in the presidential primary. Why is that? 30 30 days. The statute doesn't say 30 days. Statute says your registration has to be received so it can be processed at least 29 days before. So that's where we get the 30, because 30 is the day before 29 days, right? But 30 days. So I would have been screwed out of voting even if I had known that they had done it. All right? I have 5 minutes. Let's hurry. What's a disenfranchised lawyer to do? Propose a bill. That's my state rep. So I had called Larry Miller's office a lot and emailed him a lot, and was generally annoying. And so he proposed a bill for me. Did you know that legislators can only propose 15 bills a session? He used one of his 15 on me. I know, right? It's awesome. So he proposed a bill that would create an appeal procedure for denied provisional ballots. Here's the text of the bill. It was very short, very simple. So I went and testified in front of the General Assembly and told the same story I just told y'all, but in a little more formal way. I wore suffragette white. I am not kidding. You can look. I know how to work the system, y'all. I'm a lawyer, okay? I wore a navy dress like this one. I wore a suffragette white jacket, and I wore a Tennessee and a U.S. state flag on my lapel because that's what I was there to do. You're laughing. I'm dead serious. You know how to get work done. You got to put on the image to make it the way that you need it to be, and that's what I did. Did it work? No. But, but in any case, you know, that is something that you need to remember. So I put on I am here as a rep, as like, you know, I am a Shelby County resident. The chair of the committee was from Sevierville, my hometown, and so I told him that, and I'm like, I'm a UT alum, and, you know, now I live in Memphis, and all the Memphis folks on the panel, Antonio Parkinson was there too, and he's like, yeah, Memphis, Shelby County voter, all right, and I'm like, yes, here we are. So Larry read the proposed bill. He let me up to speak. I had exhibits for them. They said, at the end, they're like, oh my God, you were so prepared. I'm like, I have 2 law licenses. Of course I'm prepared. But they ended up sending, as the little timeline shows, they ended up sending it to committee for further study. That's the day I got to sit down with Mark Goines and get told no a lot to all of my ideas. But that's how it goes sometimes. So that's why I am here today. I am here today to say that if you are, as I was, a duly registered voter, I'm not here to talk about changing the registration guidelines or requirements or whatever. That's another presentation and another topic. Should they be changed? Probably, yes. But that's not why I'm here right now. Why I'm here right now is to say that if you are a duly registered voter in this state, your vote should count. It does not matter whether you vote in person on election day, it doesn't matter whether you vote absentee, and it doesn't matter whether you vote on election day and don't use the machine and vote provisionally. That's the takeaway. How can this happen? How can this work? What can we do? So, if your provisional ballot is denied, or if you feel or have an inkling that the commission's information is not going to be correct or sufficient to uphold your registration such that you will be able to vote, there should be a way for you to get that information to the commission so they can make the correct, informed decision. Other places do this. DC has a lot more people in it than Shelby County. It's also not a state, but that's not why we're here right now. We're talking about ways to do this. DC has a procedure for this. You can file a complaint. Their provisional ballot's called a special ballot, by the way. Virginia has something of a way. There's a way to get information statewide. There's a way to get information about, how to so that you can provide information to the government so they can make the right choice. Of course, California has a way to sue for a civil right. Surprise. But they have a way to get to go to court to get their vote to count. Would I have gone to court and filed a complaint? Me and Gary, absolutely. I would totally have done it. I'd have paid the filing fee. I wouldn't have even had to go on IFP, informal papyrus. But that's because I have 2, now 3 law licenses, and I am, I have a law degree, and I have friends I can rely on for this. I am not your average voter. The reason we need laws like this is because not all voters are lawyers with law degrees and friends who can help them do things. okay? Georgia has something. If your vote is challenged, I'm not really sure the details of this, but if Georgia can do it, we can. Florida, the state of election problems. Florida has this. So, caveat, this is from the Santa Rosa County website. I'm supposed to stop. I have 2 slides. Okay, fine. So, that says this is a non-solution, but something to consider. So Florida has something that says if you feel your provisional ballot is going to be denied, you should go to, should present information at this appointed time or by this appointed date. Other states, if you show up without valid proof of your, identification or whatever, your registration, they require you to go by a specific time to a place to present the information. That's an impediment to voting because not everyone can go by within a week after the election to the place to present the information. So that requirement is not what I'm advocating. I am advocating that as an option to say, if you want to be sure you can go do this, it is not a requirement for you to go do this. But this is a problem that doesn't happen often. It is a problem that does happen because Exhibit A, right here, right? And so it's a problem I care about. So I'm not supposed to take any questions, but you can email me. If you Google Audrey, attorney, Memphis, I am the only one. You can find me, you can email me. I love to talk about this. So with that, I will get you back to your regularly scheduled programming. You have been great and interactive, and it's after lunch, and I appreciate that, so thank you.